his faithful people. The Lord preserves those who are true to him, but the proud he pays back in full. Be strong and take heart, all you who hope in the Lord. Psalms 31, 23 through 24. What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to another YouTube video. So today is Saturday, September 13th. Typically I would have a big long run today. However, I've shifted my training a little bit, and today I have a huge brick workout. Brick workout meaning I'm stacking two different triathlon disciplines in one training session back to back. So typically what I do for a brick session is a bike to a run. I think that transition is super important. And so today I'm gonna be doing the bike, and the goal is to hit 100K. So around 62 miles, a little bit further, and then 10K right off the bike. So a 6.2 mile run. Thinking it'll take anywhere from 3 hours and 45 minutes to 4 hours and 15 minutes. In this video, I'm gonna be talking about the 3 principles for endurance training and some things that you can expect when training specifically for endurance. Not necessarily go faster, but to be able to endure for long periods of time. If your goal isn't time-based, but your goal is just to finish a race, finish an Ironman 70.3, Ironman 140.6, 100-mile ultra marathon, you really need to be training for endurance, and there's some specific things that you can do in order to train that way, where your body's going to have the proper physiological adaptations so that you can go further and go longer. Going with a little bit of a different nutrition plan and strategy than I've done in the past for videos. So I did invest and wanted to try some Morton products. Right here I have the Morton 320 mix, so that's 80 grams of carbohydrates. I intend to consume one of these within an hour and a half on the bike. First hour and a half, and then second hour and a half I'll have another one, and then about 45 minutes in I will take a Morton gel. The next 45 minutes I'll take another Morton gel. Depending on how I'm feeling, I possibly at about an hour and a half, which will be probably halfway through the bike time, take a Morton solid. This is just a regular one, and then before transitioning off the bike into the run, possibly take a calf gel, so 100 milligrams caffeine and 100 calories. So if I end up taking all of this, it'll be 1,220 calories, and that does sound like a lot. However, I'm burning anywhere from 500 to 600 calories plus on the bike per hour. So if you just go ahead and add that up, the first 3 hours, not even transitioning into the run, I'm gonna burn all of this. The only thing that does concern me with the Morton product so far is there isn't a lot of sodium. As far as electrolytes being replenished, I may have to substitute with something else, but right now we're just gonna see how this plays out. And if I need to, I'll have electrolytes on standby. Alright, so I'm almost 25 minutes into this ride, almost 14.5K. What we're gonna go ahead and talk about is the first principle that you have to understand when in training for endurance and to gain endurance, and it's training the right metabolic pathway. What do I mean by metabolic pathway? Well, it's how your body gets energy. It's how it feeds the muscles the energy in order to perform the work. There's 3 overarching metabolic pathways. The one that we're gonna talk about today, which is primarily used for long duration endurance training, is your oxidative phosphorylation. Oxidative meaning that in the presence of oxygen, it requires oxygen in order to make the ATP from the carbohydrates and fat that are in your body. So how do you train oxidative phosphorylation? Well, all these energy systems do not work independently of one another. They're all going to be active at the same time at different parts in your workout. It's where the majority of your energy is coming from. So is the majority coming from oxidative phosphorylation, or are you training so hard that it's coming from the ATP PCR system? You're not gonna be able to sustain that, which is why it's important to train
at 70% or lower of your maximum heart rate, zone 2, zone 1 training in order to use the oxidative phosphorylation system. The reason that it's important to understand the oxidative phosphorylation system is because you get a tremendous amount more of ATP, so more energy to be used by the muscles to perform work, but it takes a lot longer to get that energy. What we have to understand is that our heart rate can't get so high, we can't train so hard all the time, or we're not training this system. This is a system that's gonna allow you to endure to go the distance. And this is what should make up the majority of your training sessions throughout the week. 80 to 90% of your total volume, which we'll get into next. Now how you calculate this is take your maximum heart rate, 220 minus your age, and then take 70% of that. For me, that's like 135, 136 beats per minute. So for me to truly be in zone 2 and training the majority of the oxidative phosphorylation system, I should keep my heart rate at that or below that. Now, another thing that you can use is the Maffetone 180 method. Take 180, subtract your age, that's the maximum heart rate that you should have. However, when your heart rate gets up close to that, because it's not the same as 70% of your max heart rate, you're using some of your aerobic glycolysis system as well, which isn't a bad thing. It just means that you're gonna be using a little bit more carbohydrates than you are fats. So you're gonna have to replenish, which you should be doing anyways, throughout your training session. Principle number 1, train the right metabolic pathway. Just got done with 100K on the bike. I'll go over the stats after this, but now we're on to the 10K run. Sorry about my necklace. But second principle we're going to talk about, or aspect, is volume, which I already touched on it a little bit, but when I say volume, what I'm meaning is how often are you training, how long are you training, and at what intensity. All those things come into play. And a good rule of thumb is whatever mileage you're at right now, not to increase that more than 10% per week. So for example, if I'm running 50 miles this week, I can add 5 miles to do 55 miles next week. However, something you have to take into account is how intense are certain workouts. I can't just do 50 miles and say I'm gonna add 5 miles that are all intense. You still need to take that 80 to 20 or 90 to 10% of your mileage ratio when you're adding miles for intensity purposes. So in the example that I gave, if I added 5 miles, maybe only 1 or 1.5 of those miles are gonna be intense or threshold VO2 max type miles, because I'm not training the metabolic system. I need to. Another thing that's super important that I'm not going to touch on in this video, but I'll touch on it in another video, is nutrition. You have to be fueling before, during, and after your workouts. 100K cycle, 10K run off the bike is complete. That's the furthest I've ever biked before. I really don't know what the furthest was before this. I just know it was nowhere near 62.29 miles. It took me 3 hours, 6 minutes. Average wattage was 176. I'll post it up here on the screen as always. Average speed 20.1 miles per hour,
Total ascent 2,336 feet. For the run, 6.2 miles, 45 minutes, 32 seconds, average pace 7:19. Total ascent for this was 286 feet. I did take 1,000 milligrams of sodium on the bike, so I did add that, BPN's electrolytes, with the Morton nutrition that I had. I did take every single Morton thing that I had laid out originally. I think that I get more carbohydrates in a smaller volume, which is nice, so I'm not having to consume a ton of liquid. I can consume more water. So the third and last principle that I want to talk about in this video, as far as training for endurance, and specifically in that oxidative phosphorylation metabolic pathway, doing those easy long miles. We already talked about volume, so you have to have some progression, but the changes that you're going to see physiologically, which is the third principle I want to talk about, or aspect, is in the muscles. We'll start with the muscles. What you're going to see the longer that you do this and train at this intensity over time, the density of mitochondria is going to increase. Oxidative phosphorylation takes place in the mitochondria. Now, you might have learned that the mitochondria is a powerhouse of the cell. It is. However, not all of the metabolic pathways occur only in the mitochondria, like oxidative phosphorylation does. So if you have increased mitochondria, that means that you're going to be able to produce more ATP in the same amount of time. Also, you're going to have an increase in capillaries, where the nutrients are exchanged between your cells and between your blood vessels is also going to increase. So the more capillaries that you have, faster that you can do nutrient exchange, meaning you can input oxygen into the cells and you can get rid of carbon dioxide and the byproducts, the waste, out of the cells. So this is going to happen a lot faster. Now what you're going to see cardiovascular wise in the heart is going to change. So something that we call in exercise physiology is the athlete's heart. Now the athlete's heart, what that means is your heart itself is a muscle. It is going to grow. It is going to have some hypertrophy, and just like any muscle can grow and get bigger. Now, as your endurance increases and your fitness increases, what you're going to see with a bigger heart is an increased stroke volume, meaning that you can pump more blood throughout the body in the same amount of time, which is going to make your body a lot more efficient. But this is just a broad overview and explanation for what actually changes physiologically in your body. I could go on and on. There's a lot of different stuff and concepts that are happening at different levels, but these are some of the changes that you can expect to see. That's another reason why your blood pressure is going to be a lot better, your heart rate is going to be a lot lower at rest, because your body's just becoming more efficient at moving blood and nutrients throughout the body. But these are the three principles. So training in the right zone. Second, volume. Third, physiological changes. Your body's going to become a lot more efficient. That was pretty much all that I have for this video. About to go into 3 weeks out from Ironman 70.3. About to get close to the taper. And then from there, 13 weeks out from the Dallas BMW Marathon. Thank you guys for all the support and all the love that I've been seeing on the channel. See you guys in the next one. God bless.